My name is Alfred Scheibner, and my middle name is Arthur. My rank was PFC. And the reason why I'm a PFC is because Congress had a law, all returning privates will become PFCs. And that's the reason why I'm a PFC. I was in the artillery, U.S. Army. Well, the first days of the service is when I left Philadelphia. I was told I'm going south, Fayetteville, North Carolina. And in December in Philadelphia, it was cold, so I thought we was going down south and have it warm. And by the time I got in Fayetteville, North Carolina, we had about 3 inches of snow. and it was just as cold, or not colder, than Philadelphia. So that was my first day in the service. Well, several days, because it took a train ride, you might say, from Philly to North Fayetteville. I remember being in the Indian Town Gap. That was the port of embarkation. And when I got my bunk, the stranger sat the bunk next to me. Another soldier, you might say, But he was asking me all kinds of questions. And one question, he says, suppose you get killed by a German, what would you do? What can you do? I says, it'd be the end, wouldn't it? And so I just told him, I said, well, they'll just bury me and that's it. But I guess afterwards I found out it was intelligence checking me out because I'm German descendant, and they're going to send me in Europe instead of in the Pacific. I have a cousin who's German too, but he was naturalized, and he went to Japan in the Pacific. From Fayetteville, I understand we went to New Jersey. What was the name of the Indian Town Gap? To prepare to go overseas. And I was among the first group of replacements of the North African campaign. I became what they call a radio operator for the forward observer. We were with the infantry, and sometimes we were even ahead of the infantry because we could get a secured ground, high ground to look over and have the infantry come up after us. I was first put in the number 1, the First Division. That was in Africa and Sicily. And then from Sicily, I was transferred into the 3rd Division that went to Italy and France. And the 1st Division packed up and went to England, and they were in on Omaha Beach in France at the time, the big invasion, which I missed out on. Yeah, but I had my share. In Italy, being on the forward observer, we were in a situation where at that time the Air Force, the Army Corps, we call it the Air Corps, because they later on made the Air Force. But the Army Air Corps, there was a unit called the 99th Fighter Squadron. When they left their point, they were given the directions as to where to go and drop their bombs and strafe the personnel. And what happened was, we on the ground advanced to the point when the airplanes came over, they were bombing us and strafing us. Thinking, the guy, I imagine from the air, it's kind of hard to tell whether he's a German soldier or an American soldier. But we fired all kinds of flares, let them do, but they just dropped their load and gone. And they really did a number on us at that time in Italy. When they brought them up to show their damage, they broke down. Every one of them broke down. They couldn't fly anymore. I do remember also in the south side of Italy trying to get the monastery mountain where the Germans used for an observation post, and we were not supposed to bomb or shell the monastery until when we went into Anzio, we were supposed to cut that off, but it didn't really work. We couldn't advance more than about 5 miles, 10 miles of the Anzio beach, and because they had us bogged down. And of course, sunny Italy is what the advertisement was always about. When the tourist people, we found out that sunny Italy was really a muddy Italy because of the rains. And we were also had to fight the mud. I was on a mountain, and there was a shell came in and hit my leg, and I couldn't feel it. It gave me like a Charlie horse, and picked it up, and it was the size of a nickel. And I mailed that to my mother and father, told them this is a piece that hit me, but it didn't do any damage. Matter of fact, no, I got the picture of me in the service. They got that little piece of metal in the corner. So, and I was told, why don't I report that and get a Purple Heart? And I thought that was stupid to get Purple Heart for something like that. Didn't even break skin. So a year later or so, I got it in both legs. So Rome was captured or liberated, let's say, because by that time Italy became an ally. But when we went into Rome, nobody could have any real credit of being the first in Rome, because they were coming in from the north to south. And I know when I went in, I was being shot at, sniper fire, but I was among the first in Rome too. So, and which was kind of eerie, you might say, being a big city, and then this firepower would come from somewhere, and I'm just lucky I didn't get hit. Well, after I lost 2 buddies, you might say, that I made, then I figured I was bad luck, so I became what you call a loner in the service. Although I had friends, but they were never real so-called close buddies. Another sad incident, but we had to laugh about it, was when they fired the shot down, and all of a sudden we see the black smoke with a body on top. And that shell had actually hit somebody direct, but he blasted up over the smoke. And it's I would say one of them things the Army had to do. The good thing about Rome was I got a chance to see the Colosseum, all these historic places. Matter of fact, I even, at that time, Pope Pius the 12th was the Pope at that time. And there was a real long line, I would say almost 500 yards of double line so they could see the Pope, shake hands or kiss his ring, whatnot at that time. And not being Catholic, so it didn't bother me whether I stood in line or not. I just walked past them and went into the Vatican. But I felt kind of honored because he saw me as I came up, and we were, I would say, maybe 15, 20 feet away from one another, and he gave me a salute. And I saluted right back to him, and went into the Vatican, tour myself, you might say. And then when we went into France, the Colmar Pocket, and which was my Waterloo, I got wounded driving a Jeep away out of from the airplane, and the airplane dropped a bomb on me, and of course it was a what they call a personnel bomb, about a 50-pounder. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. And my friend that was with me at the time, we both got wounded out of it. So when he dropped his bomb, the Jeep rolled over it. The engine of the Jeep took most of it, and the steering column was blown off. Big hole through the floorboard. I could see my leg drew up, and I could see through my leg. And then when I got the Jeep finally stopped, I rolled out of the Jeep because I couldn't climb out. I had to really literally fall out. And when I laid on the highway, I discovered I was wounded in both legs, but I was all covered up with blood. I thought maybe my whole lower section was blown up, but I was a messenger that day. I was not a forward observer. As we laid on the highway, I couldn't do anything, you might say, and I called for my buddy, and he crawled on his hands and knees. As a matter of fact, on his belly, he was dragging himself up. He says, "I can't help you. I need help myself." I said, "Oh gosh, I guess this is the end then," because I could see, like I said, how I was wounded. And out of the blue, a soldier come over the field, and he says, "I'll help you guys." And how he helped was, a Jeep was coming up, loaded with his ammunition, and he wasn't going to stop. He was just going to go right through, because all this was airplanes and everything going on, you know. And this GI stood in the middle of the burrow pit and us on the Jeep. He had to be run over if that Jeep wanted to go through. And when the Jeep actually stopped right in front of him, he says, "Let's help these two guys." Well, there's three fellas in that Jeep. They jumped out, they grabbed me, threw me in the trailer, and grabbed him, the other guy, and threw him on the hood. And we were gone. And we drove maybe a mile or so to what they call the aid station. And then they dropped us off, and then they went on. What they were going to do, I don't know, but they were heading along with the ammunition. That was really an interesting day. At February 2nd, never forgot it. I was in Battle Creek, Michigan, in the hospital. I was married April 14th and got my discharge May 1st. I was given what you call a 3-week furlough before they gave me the final papers. My wife was told by service officers what to expect from me, you know. But I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't what you call combat fatigue. what we called it. Today they call it, what, PSTP or something like that. And, but my wife was told to watch out for whatever it was. And I have to remark, she was a remarkable lady because at times she was, how would you say, very caring. I wasn't realize what she was doing, but I think I was. I come out of it about anyway, 65 years with her. So I wish I would have been, how would you say, not so stubborn, and would have bought into the subscribed to the book that they printed out for the 3rd Division, and they, what was it? They wanted, what, $5 or something like that for it at the time. But I was so bitter, you might say. I didn't want nothing to do with it. But however, I wish I would have, because that would have been a diary for me, because the 3rd Division would have been from Sicily throughout the campaign, and then I was wounded before they became the official service guards, or whatever you want, honored guards at Nuremberg at the trials. But I was already gone, so I didn't get in that at all. I became a linotype operator through the advice of the service officer, because my wounds restricted me from standing kind of long time. I was a pressman before I went in the service, and so being a pressman requires standing up. And so the service officer said, why don't you learn to be a linotype operator in the printing field, and that way you can sit down and make a good living, which actually did turn out to be very good. We used to say, I wouldn't take $1 million for what we did, but it was $1 million worth of experience.